Following England's international friendlies against the United States and Switzerland, we're here to summarise the international break for the Lionesses. We look at the positives around the 0-0 draw with the uswnt, but why our 1-0 win against Switzerland was a cause for concern. This is our England international break review. Alright, let's talk about England over the international break. Then we did plan to do a video separately on the USA, but due to some time constraints, we're going to merge them all into one video here. We're going to talk about the England draw with USA on Saturday, and we're going to talk about the 1-0 win over Switzerland. Overall, then, actually, let's start with the USA. What do you think of the game, Harry?
Yeah, I think it was a positive game. I think to draw 0-0 with the Olympic champions is a thing that we should be positive about. Yes, they were a weakened USA side, but still, it was a very, very tough game. It was a decent game despite the fact there were no goals in it. I think they will worry England about the fact they only had one shot on target in the second half, but overall, it wasn't too bad of a performance. It was an exciting game. We always knew it was going to be difficult, but I think England gave a good account of themselves on Saturday.
Yeah, I thought that tactically England played quite well. It was probably one of our better coach performances in recent times. I think that certain individuals, like Lucy Bronze, I thought was absolutely phenomenal. I think it was one of Beth Mead's best games in an England shirt in a while. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, she didn't really have an attacking part, part to play in the attacking side of the game. But I thought that she was so useful with holding the width, with her positioning, with her dropping deep and receiving the ball. I thought it was one of our best games in England shirt. So really impressive stuff from Mead, really impressive stuff from Bronze. I just think we struggled to link up effectively in attacking areas. But when you consider that Lauren James wasn't on the pitch and Lauren Hemp wasn't on the pitch, I don't think it's necessarily that big a concern. But I think once you bring those sort of players back into this team, suddenly it looks a whole lot stronger. So
yeah,
while there were some concerns and while there were some areas I still think there is improvement needed, I think overall the USA game was very, very impressive. I really liked how we were using the defence in build-up, so pushing Jess Carter. It looked like Carter was going to play left-back again, and that worried me. But using her as that left centre-back, and she pushed into defence midfield in build-up. So when the ball was back with Mary Earps, you had Carter push into defence midfield position, then you had Greenwood and you had Williamson pulling wide to be their centre-back options, then you had Bronze pushing a little bit higher but having width in build-up, and then you had Beth Mead who would drop deeper to come into a position to receive the ball. So you created a sort of a 2-3 in terms of a build-up structure, which I thought was really effective. It allowed us to push Walsh and Stanway on a bit, it allowed us to push Park and who else was it? And Jess Naz as well up a bit. So I thought it was really effective for those reasons, and we seem to be able to play out with quite a lot of consistency. Now it has to be said the US didn't have their strongest front line, and perhaps if they had Rodman, Swanson, and Smith, they may have pressed more effectively. So I think there are still some concerns, but that build-up structure was really nice.
Yeah, it was nice seeing England do something different. And I think that was key. After the last international break, which was pretty disappointing with the cagey game against South Africa and the loss to Germany, it was nice to see England to come into this international break, try something different against one of the best teams in the world right now, and to see it pay off. And as you say, it was well worked from everyone. I think the other thing defensively was the solidity. And I know Mary Earps did bail us out a couple of times. Another phenomenal game from Earps. But Bronze was solid. So was Williamson. And Greenwood was, as always, solid. And that's the thing. It was clear. Yeah. It was nice to see players who potentially haven't been at their best this season. I think on Saturday, that especially for like Bronze, for Williamson, it was their best performance of the season for club and country. And that's exactly what you want to be seeing.
Yeah, and I think that giving Bronze a slightly less of a defensive responsibility, I thought that was really useful because in possession we lined up in what was it was sort of a 3-1-4-2. It was very aggressive, but I liked how we were lining up. I thought that was quite effective. At times it was a 3-2-5 where Stanway and Walsh in the pivot, and then you'd have Jess Naz come a little bit narrower, Park come a little bit narrower, and Mead and Bronze hold the width. Obviously, Rousseau in the striker position. So I thought that was quite effective what we did in possession. We couldn't really create any opportunities, and again, I think that's partly USA are such a good defence, but also we lack those creative sparks. You don't have someone like a Lauren James or a Lauren Hemp who will just pick up the ball and change the game. So I think there were aspects missing, but there were some really, really positive signs. I think the fact that we held such a strong US side for so long was good. I do still have concerns, as I say. I think if the US had that, the strongest front three, they probably would have scored some goals. The other thing that intrigues me is how this translates to a full strength starting 11, because you'd have to assume that Jess Carter won't be playing or won't be starting at next year's Euros. Could Greenwood, Bright, Williamson do the same sort of thing? I mean, for me, it would probably be pushing Blair Williamson into that defensive midfield position or Maya Letitia. who
that's a lot.
is never going to play at centre back or defensive midfield apparently. But we'll talk about Switzerland in a moment. But I thought that that looks like it could translate, but it'd be interesting to see how it does. I think that Niamh Charles would be another interesting part because, would she play that more Beth Mead, which is almost a left wing position, or would she? And then that became sort of a left midfielder type role. So that's an interesting part of it is how do we bring that into play? Could it be that we play with Bronze and Charles as our fullbacks rather than as wing backs, but drop someone out of midfield, so maybe play someone like Williamson higher and then drop her between the centre backs to push the wing backs on? That could be something that works. So there's definitely options for England, but I thought out possession shape was really strong. 4-4-2, it's quite a basic one, but everyone knows their duties in it, so I thought that worked quite effectively. And I thought it was a good setup. I thought we set up well against probably the best team in the world right now. So for me, USA, despite the fact we didn't score, overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly positive.
I think the main questions from this international break are over personnel rather than tactics. And I think that's kind of the way around you want it. I think the way we played, or the two different ways England played on Saturday and on Tuesday, worked. It is just going to depend, as you were saying there, on who is Wiegman going to pick to play those roles. And there's numerous options. There's a lot of decisions to be made personnel-wise. But I think that's a step in the right direction. I think we came into this international break a little bit concerned about what England were doing tactically, especially after the Germany game, where Germany managed to kind of outplay England and make it very, very difficult for England to do anything. Wiegman's come into this international break and changed up tactically, and it seems to work. It's just that personnel selection. It's going to be a tough decision once we get to the Euros, but overall, positive stuff and a decent draw against a very good team.
Yeah, I thought that. I thought we played really well against the US. Moving on then back to last night, the game against Switzerland. I thought it was a very different situation. I don't think England played very well at all. I was quite frustrated watching them. It just wasn't an enjoyable game. I don't really understand why we changed the setup so dramatically. It was more of a 5-1, or sorry, a 3-2-2 in a sense, or a 3-5-2. It just didn't really work or make any sense to me. The profile of player that Wiegman used in certain positions made no sense. I thought that Ruby Mace as a lone pivot played well, but she wasn't able to progress the ball because she didn't have any forward options. It was so easy to handle what England were trying to threaten. And I thought watching, how we played against the USA and watching this game, there was such a stark contrast. And I think the thing, though, that you can say across two games is we haven't scored from open play in either of the two matches. So I think that's a big concern. And when you consider this Switzerland side lost 6-0 to Germany on Friday night, that's a really worrying prospect.
Yeah.
Because we just don't look proficient in attacking areas. And admittedly, you could say we had no Lauren James, no Hemp in either of the games. Russo only played 20-odd minutes against Switzerland. So
45.
Did she come on half time? Oh, yeah, she did, sorry. So, she didn't have the whole game. So England's stars weren't out there, but still, we should have been putting a few past that Switzerland team.
Yeah, very much so. As you say, I think it was the tactic was bizarre, but it was only bizarre due to the personal selection that was named with it. I think, Laetitia and George aren't wing-backs. We already knew that was never going to work, and evidently it didn't work.
And in the system, they have to operate as though they are wingers at times. And evidently they're not that. I mean, I don't know how much you need to watch Maya Laetitia. I'd say about 20 minutes to realise she's not a winger. At 5 minutes, in actual fact, she's not a winger. That's not her profile. I thought that was a really odd profiling. George, slightly more attacking, slightly better in those sorts of areas, but still not proficient. So, I mean, if that's Charles and Bronze, different story, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I said that's what confused me about the team selection. I thought the decision to have 3 right-footed centre-backs in a 3-back was interesting. I don't think that worked particularly well. We weren't able to execute long balls effectively. Thought Millie Turner being the centre of that back 3 was weird as well because her passing range is not as strong as Millie Bright's. So I thought that was really odd. And there's just weird selections across the board. As I say, Mason, that single pivot, was played well, but had no options really to work off of. I thought we saw Park and Clinton combine twice, which seemed to be what the whole tactic was built around, was getting Park and Clinton close together. But they were only really able to do that, once or twice, and neither were massively fruitful. And the goal we scored was a free kick that should have been saved by Herzog quite easily, bounced off the post, and then Clinton smashed it in. I thought that everything good we did against the US seemed to just be completely undone against Switzerland.
It did. I think, to take positives from the game, obviously it was the first England start for Aggie Beaver-Jones, which I couldn't really believe. That was her first start. but good to see her get the opportunity. It was first caps for Blinkilde and Mace. So good stuff for England. Good opportunities. I think that factored into the attack slightly. The fact that obviously it was first starts for two of the front four, and Clinton eventually Clinton scored early on. That's as we expected. She's been in brilliant form for England and for Man United. But overall, would have expected a better performance for England. Would have expected more goals and to be a little bit positive. But I think because we know that we changed so drastically between USA and Switzerland, I think it's the positive for England is that it wasn't a great performance, but at least we know why. In terms of there is a reason it didn't work, because the tactic and the personnel were a complete mismatch. Yeah. And I think that's not a bad, it's not a great situation to be in, but at least we know why we didn't play very well.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it massively. I think that if we're gonna trial that three or whatever you want to class formation, we'll call it a 3-5-2. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. If you want to trial that, then why not do that against the US, where we had players that would fit the profiles? That for me is the weird one. We don't have a left wing back bar Neve Charles, so either way, that you're shoehorning into a system where there's only really one player that can do it. Yeah. I mean, Mead can also do that. We saw that against the US. I thought she did well holding that width, but if she's asked to do that defensive side of the game as well, I'm not sure I'd be quite as comfortable with that. I don't think that she is. I think she's a fantastic player, Bethany, but is she a good defender? Probably not. So, I think it's a bit of a weird decision to try and go down that route. I thought what we did against the US, being able to push Bronze on without having to pull anyone deeper because of the way that we use the situational back three rather than just a standard back three, I thought was so much more effective. I just don't understand what we tried to do. And then out of possession, there wasn't really an out of possession shape because we never lost the ball. Yeah. We just passed around in a shoehorn. Occasionally, Switzerland would break, but they never had a sustained period of possession. So it was a really weird one. Really weird game for England. I thought we were much worse than we were against the US. It just wasn't a very inspiring game. I thought if we played the way we did against the USWNT, we put a few past that Switzerland team. But alas, we changed everything up and it didn't work.
I think the main focus now for England is to come back in 2025 with the Nations League, with the pre-tournament friendlies going into Euros, play some really nice football, play to the best of your ability, and then hit Euro 2025 in really good form. That's the key now. The next few months for England going into the new year are absolutely pivotal. Got to find form, got to start beating teams convincingly, got to start fighting hard again. We've got to play Spain twice, just once before the start of the Euros. So
it's twice, I think.
Yeah, is it not? Is it?
Yes, yeah,
June. Twice. Yeah, we've got to face Spain. That's to be a very, very good test. That could be the final in Euro 2025. So a lot of big games coming up for England the next few months. Have to get it right in those. Have to start the new year well. And if we go into that Euros on a run of 5-6 wins on the trot, then suddenly things are looking very, very positive.
Yeah, I think just to play devil's advocate to that point you've just made, we're 7 months out from a major tournament starting, and I couldn't name you the strongest 11. And now I know part of that is because we've had a few injuries. Jane's been out for this international break, for both international breaks actually. There was no Lauren Hemp at this hit one. So yeah, you can say, well, those players haven't been there, so we don't really know who's fitting in where. But I think it is a bit of a concern that we don't seem to know even our best formation or best 11 7 months out from a major tournament. And we are going in as defending Euros champions. There is an honour to defend there. I think it's a bit of a worrying situation, if I'm being frank, a little bit of a worrying situation. But I still think England are really strong. I think Wiedmann's still a top coach, so they've got time to figure it out. There's still 6 international games between now and then, plus I believe we'll probably play some international friendlies, so probably 8 games between now and pre-tournament friendlies. The thing is, we've got the Nations League only a month before, so it's, they might as well just stay in England camp for a month. But yeah, they've got a lot of games to try and figure out what they're doing there. So I don't think it's alarm bells just yet, but there are some worrying signs.
Yeah, definitely. It's, I think there's a decision to be made in every single position on the pitch, and that is, that's a good place because it shows you've got a lot of competition. That your squad's very, very strong, but you'd like to think hopefully in the next few months England will start to build the strongest 11, and hopefully they'll all be fit. By the time we get around to the Euros, you had four or five key players missing out once again through injury at this international break. Hopefully they'll all be back come June and July.
Hopefully we can stop playing Maya Letitia as a right wing back. I thought that was such a poor profiling. But yeah, there was it was an interesting international break. As I say, USA game really positive, Switzerland less so. Overall, how would you summarise the international break?
It was positive, but work to do.
Okay.
That's how I'm going to put it.
I like it. I like it. I like the optimism behind it. But yeah, I think that is a nice summary of the international break. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Do get involved in the comments below and give us your thoughts. How worried, how excited are you for England? There won't be people out there that watched the Switzerland game and thought we were brilliant. In which case, I'd love to hear from you and why you think that. So do get involved in the comments down below. There's everything from us today, though. We are back this weekend with WSL live streams, so look out for that. We are doing Liverpool versus Manchester United.
Yes.
Man United versus Liverpool. But yeah, brilliant game. Should be very exciting. And then Champions League returning next midweek. So very exciting stuff coming up. That's everything for us today, though. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.